Regent's Park was planned by architect John Nash as an area of leisure for the royal family and other nobles. It was originally intended as a private park, founded by private villas and commercial buildings. Regent's Canal was originally part of the park, but it was moved further north for transportation purposes. The park was open to the public by 1841 and today is one of the main parks of central London. The canal is used for tourism, leisure, and living. During the 19th century, the view and literature published on the park was strictly descriptive. An example of these are the books from John Limbert, A Picturesque Guide to the Regent's Park, written in 1829, which is a park guide created by the Park Association. The diorama and the Colosseum were described as an important part of John Nash's original design vision. A similar perspective is found in Peter Cunningham's book, The Handbook of London, Past and Present, written in 1850. Offering a significant insight to what the Regent's Park and the canal looked like in the middle of the 19th century.
During the 20th century, the park became more public than originally planned as the planned villas and previous buildings were replaced by Queen Mary's Gardens and the open-air theatre. As the park and canal's intended use differed from John Nash's intended vision, the narrative surrounding the park and canal dramatically changed, and studies developed during this era were critical and analytical. Works of John Summerson, one of the most influential British architectural historians, describes John Nash's vision in a detailed, analytical way and questions the original park design, criticizing certain aspects while celebrating others. Maya Coleman states in her thesis titled Community, Connection and Conflict, the Liminal Spaces of Regent's Canal and the Industrial Transition of London, that the lived reality along the banks of the canal was radically different from what the Regent's Canal Company so carefully planned. This created conflict as previously separate classes of people were brought closer together than ever before as the City of London progressed further into the processes of industrialization. This shows that published works of the 21st century tended to combine narratives of the historical development of the canal with the lived experiences and social and urban impact of the spaces. The original narrative of private versus public, as discussed in previous sources, is described further.
Historians like Scovazzi and Cabau developed these aspects even further by talking about both the canal and narrow boats. These last ones emerged as wooden cargo boats, representing an era known as Canal Age, where the canals constructed a network to fulfill commercial purposes. However, due to development of railroad transportation, the golden age of canals declined and the boatmen started to migrate to work in the railways. The character of the canals has significantly changed in recent years. After being marginalized spaces, considered negative and dangerous to the underuse, programs were initiated in the second part of the 20th century, targeted at restoring canals for recreational and commercial use. Over time, narrow boats became more like flats than boats. As Jovo, an English boater in his 60s, argues, they are no longer merely used for vacations and one-day trips, but have now become homes for most individuals who prefer to live aboard permanently. This brings us to the heart of the ongoing issue in London, notably in the east and central sectors. London is experiencing a significant housing crisis, with prices of both possible purchasable houses as well as rental properties increased dramatically. Overall, the great increase in the number of licensed boats, the congestion of urban areas, and the growing trend of overstaying are all potential signs of a shift in how narrow boating is viewed today. It's unclear whether mobility on the adoption of boating as a mobile lifestyle is a wish for some or a practical choice for others to meet their financial needs.
Existing narratives of Regent's Park and Canal have transformed over the centuries. The initial readings of the spaces are descriptive and analytical, while the more recent sources have a greater social focus on lived experiences. Existing studies focus primarily on one topic at a time and do not capture the plurality and multifunctional character of the park and canal. The narrative is lacking a complete environmental perspective in which the interactive relationship between the canal, those occupying it, and the city development is explored. How did the urban context develop around the canal, and how did the park transition from public to private affect the surrounding spaces? Understanding how development of these spaces impacted people's lives on an individual scale while simultaneously impacting city development and vice versa, is an interesting perspective missing today. Another environmental perspective currently missing is the extractive forces needed to develop such spaces. Where did these materials come from, and how did these resources shape the narrative of the development of the park, canal, and city of London as a whole? Combining these perspectives and the plurality of the spaces in the same text would make for a more complete case study, exploring the environmental history of this canal as a second nature space in detail.